Good evening, everyone. So as is usual for the reorganizational meeting, I get to open as chair pro tem until we appoint a new chair.
I nominate Aaron Jipner. Second.
Coming right on, we're getting there. First, I'll call the meeting to order at 6:01.
Yeah.
And we have temporary note takers and our minute taker until our tech situation gets resolved there. Thanks to Aaron for capturing some notes on paper while that gets going. With that, I will take a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. I'll
All right.
second.
Meredith, and then was it Kristen second?
Yep.
All those in, any discussion on the agenda for tonight? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the agenda? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? Agenda is approved. Next action is to elect officers. Any nominations for chair?
Nominate Aaron Jipner.
Second.
Hi. Aaron Jipner has been nominated. Any other nominations?
No.
How do you really feel, Ken?
This continuity is just so nice. But welcome her.
Hearing no other nominations, all those in favor of electing Aaron Jipner as your chair?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Congratulations.
Okay, thank you. No worries. All right, we'll move down then to the vice chair role. Any nominations for vice chair?
I'd like to elect Mike Dash.
Wait a second.
Any other nominations? All right, hearing none, all those in favor of electing Mike Dash as vice chair, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, welcome back, Mike.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you all.
All right, so for clerk, I did put it out, give Liz a little reprieve from that clerk duty, just because she's carrying so many other things. Barb did respond to me and say Barb would take that on, but that's the only person I've heard from. And she's not here to say no.
That makes it easy.
Sounds good.
Okay.
I nominate her. I second.
Okay.
You've already told her.
Yeah.
You
All right.
would be absent.
Any other nominations? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of electing Barb as your new board clerk, please say aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay.
Sincere thanks to Liz for all the time.
Agreed. Okay. That's our reorganization for officers. At this time, we can move down to public comment. Any public comment from Zoom? Okay, hearing none, we'll move down then into the board management and governance section. So the first is a discussion item about what resources or training the board wants to pursue. And last meeting, I had taken some notes about, or actually 2 meetings ago, about what things we might want to look at. So open meeting law was one of them. Did you all get the flyer from VSBA? Okay, and then I sent out the welcome packet again, which has all those other resources embedded into it. So if you have any questions or anything that doesn't make sense, just reach out to me. We can go over it. But I think most of the stuff's in there. We also talked about how to write monitoring reports as a training. And that one we can probably handle in-house, right? We could Brad and Liz, I'm gonna look at you a little bit only because you've been here the longest, just to kind of tap you and say, could you maybe put something together and do that training, or would that be something?
Sure, yeah.
So I'll leave it to you two to kind of coordinate that and we can touch base about when that might make sense to do on another agenda.
Okay.
Other than that, and policy and governance continued training, there's some opportunity. Was it May 11th? Is that what you said?
Right.
Um,
Pull it up to find out for sure.
Debbie Singheiser, do we remember her from one of our trainings? So she sent an email to Patrick and I, sorry, about, I'm just pulling it up while I'm talking, about a policy and governance 101 for new board members. And it would be with Jeannie.
Yeah.
Jeannie Collins. And so she's doing a 1-day in-person training for new board members and basically just a policy and governance 101. There are 2 options and dates for location. Thank you. So it could be in Rutland County or it could be in Montpelier. And that would be either May 3rd or May 4th. So if people wanted to, you could choose to go to that training and do the policy and governance 101, the Jeannie Collins. We would sort of need to know tonight if you were interested in that, even if it's a preliminary interest, because we need to send that to Debbie so she can start to plan for that.
And which of the 2 options? is
And
better?
which of the 2 options is better? So either May 3rd in Rutland at one of the RNESU schools,
That's a Saturday.
or Sunday, the 4th, up in the VSBA offices in Montpelier. So is anyone interested in any of that?
I'm preliminarily interested in going to the Montpelier one.
Okay,
Yeah, you could put me down for that one too.
okay. Meredith and Kristen, anyone else?
Tentatively.
Liz, for the May 4th?
Yeah. Tentatively.
How long is the training?
It's a great question.
It says 1 day. I don't see any other specifics.
Full day?
Yeah,
It says in materials, so yeah, I guess you could expect a full day or.
Hey, Erin,
Hey, Rod.
is this like a canned presentation that she does over and over to just different groups? And I guess the reason I ask is because I think that there's one area in policy and governance that we struggle with. And if we're gonna spend time on it, especially if it's gonna be all day, it'd be good to at least to have some discussion about, how you balance your role, how do you balance your role as a member of the board, without you sort of dipping into the, sort of the responsibilities of the administration and worse, the schools themselves. Because I think sometimes we struggle with that. And if we could ask the presenter to maybe focus a little less on the brainy theoretical stuff and a little bit more on the practical side of being able, for us to be able to know where the guardrails are. I don't know whether anybody else has that sense, but that's certainly been a concern of mine. Especially when you have a board that, we have a board that changes pretty regularly. And so, and that's the issue that keeps coming up. And we end up spending a lot of time at meetings, sort of circling around that issue, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think this probably is a canned training, because it's policy and governance 101. I think you're right though, Brad, that we do circle that conversation a lot, and I wonder how much of it comes from a general misunderstanding of policy and governance. So maybe a 101 would be okay, right? To just get more exposure to that. We always have the option of inviting someone in from VSBA or Jeannie Collins herself to dig into that work, if that feels like something people want to add to our menu of things that would make sense for resources or training.
Can I make a point to Brad? Something that Brad said, and I don't disagree. I also think, and this might be bigger than this conversation, our community doesn't understand policy governance. And sometimes I know as a board member, it's difficult because we're all approached about issues or concerns that our constituents have. And it's hard for them to understand that we don't necessarily have a say in some of those things. So I think that's part of it too, Brad. It's not just the board and the conversations that we're having or the boundaries that we might cross or we might not cross. it's also somehow helping our community understand what it means.
Yeah, I know, I agree. I think, how we communicate with taxpayers about that.
Yeah,
Because I'm sometimes at a loss, when, especially if I'm cornered or something.
I mean, Kathy and I had our small meeting, 5 people attended, and that was a major point of discussion. They did not, one of them understood, but most of them did not understand what that really meant and why we couldn't do this, that, or the other thing.
Herb,
So-
we need some legislation.
Is there an agenda?
Come right at it.
Keep track of how many times you hear that. You can start.
That issue too,
So the snippet we got from Debbie was a full day in-person training for newly elected or appointed members to school boards that have formally adopted policy governance as its system. Training is designed for orienting new board members who want to understand the what, why, and how of policy governance principles. In addition to an overview of the 10 principles, the training will cover the mechanics of developing and implementing policies, policy monitoring, agenda planning, work plan creation, board self-evaluation, and the superintendent evaluation process in a policy governance system. So it covers a good swath of things.
I'll tentatively put it on
Okay.
Sunday, I think that's fine.
Okay. All right, so we have a good bunch of people. So we will reach back out to Debbie and see how that all fleshes out for you all. Now we'll be in touch about that. So I captured your idea though, Brad, too, about continued training around the separation of roles. And then perhaps there's a little caveat in there about how we incorporate some greater community learning or how do we put resources together that might help our community understand that? Are there any other things people are feeling like they could really benefit from in terms of training? I mean, think even out to August when we have our retreat, right? What would feel good to lead even further into?
Something, we were just on a call today with the folks from Up for Learning. So they'll be coming to the next meeting in March to do a little kind of update and talk a little bit about sort of the role, diversity, equity, inclusion, how that kind of is embedded in their work and how that might continue going forward. And I recall a conversation last meeting or 2 meetings ago about an interest in sort of the more future focused work.
Yeah.
And how that connects to what we do at the retreat, et cetera. And so the topic of the conversation went on today, we sort of talked about sort of broad strokes, timeline, sequence of events, et cetera. Kind of where we're going with this is we have this portrait of a learner that we're in the midst of right now that will kind of come to completion this spring, which becomes kind of a launching point into looking at the ends policy. And so there's a body of work sinking into the ends and what do we want to do with the ends in light of the portrait of a learner? And then once the ends has done whatever we're going to do with that then is a launching point into strategic planning, which is another pretty significant body of work. So thinking about that sequence of events and the time and energy it takes to engage in that, and how do we want to structure the time to do that work? What might a committee be asked to do versus what the whole board's going to do, and what do we do at the retreat? What do we do at regular meetings? Is there something in addition to that we need to schedule? So it's not so much in the training realm, but it is in terms of, an investment of time and managing all that time. So just I wanted to plant that seed tonight to be thinking about how we manage all that. And we can talk more as we sort of map out agendas and things, but just that in case that fits into this conversation somehow, I'd bring that into the room.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful, because I know in our meetings, a lot of times, for community engagement, it's sort of like, okay, what do we take back to the board? What like, where do we fit in for our role with this committee? So I think that would probably be helpful for us.
Absolutely. And just in general, like how other boards do community engagement committees and what works would be, I think, super helpful.
I'll just add on to I think what Patrick was saying. I do think we could have a decent training component though too, in terms of some of the details, like if we're gonna really be rewriting the ends policy. We've been throwing out some generalities of like what we might like to see in ends policy, but I don't know if we know, like, are there like best practices to writing something like that, right? Or to writing a strategic plan. And then I may have mentioned earlier, like, I'm excited that there's some change on the horizon and that we might be a part of that. But I'm also unsure about what steps, how we can best position the work that we do to then be accepted by the community, to be a part of it, to bring them along. And I wonder if there is training available about like, how do you make big change? Right? Because it feels like we run the risk, that's just happened time and time again through no fault of the previous boards, of doing a ton of work. And then it just sort of fizzles at the end. And ideally, we don't end at that point, right? And so I was thinking about what are the steps that we could take along the way to bolster the chances that that effort leads to some change, whatever that change might be, but brings the community along with that.
I've been thinking about that too. As the up for learning work ends, just thinking about, okay, my next goal is really the ends policy, but I have no idea even where to
Right.
start with that. So, and really thinking it probably starts much in the same way as this work with up for learning is getting a whole bunch of people to say what they want. I mean, we have this sort of idea that'll give us a basis, but then going from there, there's a lot more to be done. So.
One of the things we talked about today too was, I think there's mutual sort of appreciation for the youth adult partnership in creating this portrait of a learner. And in what ways might we continue that youth adult partnership in redrafting the ends and then in building a strategic plan and then whatever other change may come about from that, like maintaining that thread of youth adult partnership throughout. Seems like something that would be a tremendous value add, that there's appreciation for amongst the board, the community, et cetera. In which case, up for learning as sort of the main folks in the state and beyond around that youth adult partnership work. So we could continue to partner with them in certain ways as another through line for all of that work.
Yeah. Any other things that people would like to add to the global training list? Things that would be helpful or things that might even be fun to learn about? No? Well, you know how to reach me if you think of something. All right, we'll move down to discussion item B then, which is the revision of committee charges. And initially this was gonna be an action item, but the last two times we've tried to have it as an action item for this meeting, we didn't have time to look at the charges as a group. As your, committee groups first, and then bring them to the board. Just to make sure everyone's in agreement. So what I would like to have happen is once you meet as the first time for your new committee, your first action is to revise your charge and then bring it back to the board. I think it'll probably be in April, because I don't think all our committees are meeting.
Be the second meeting,
Yeah.
it'd be the business meeting in
Yeah,
April.
the business meeting in April, so we can approve them as our charges then, but we can operate under our old ones until our current ones, until that time. Does that make sense and feel okay? Okay. So then we'll move down to our first action item C, which is to appoint representatives to many committees and other assignments. So the first one would be for A, we need to come up with our group for community engagement. So if you. I know how to approach this action, so am I doing them all separately? So gather the names of people in the committee and then,
That may be the cleanest way,
okay,
unless it was everybody stays exactly the same and we add Herb to something and then you could do the slate. Otherwise, I think you're gonna have to do one at a time.
does everyone want to stay where they're at?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and then, or you had initially said P and G, but now you're thinking finance?
Yeah, well, let me explain my flip-flopping there,
Sure.
I mean, I'm really happy to be here, by the way. Anyway, it feels really great. And I did it for two reasons. One is that Starksville only had two members on the board and we needed three, so. And the other was I was hoping to maybe, because, I'm over in Montpelier, how can I help the board in terms of stuff that goes on. So that's why I was debating, and where I could best help the board. you know, I write a lot of things, so I'm pretty good at that, documents and things like that. But I'm also thinking, right now, a lot of financing issues are really in the fore. I know, you know, the budget is a different kind of thing, but you know, things are going on over there. So I was thinking maybe, you know, be on the finance committee, but if someone else wants to be on that, that's okay too.
Okay.
That, you know, if that's, I don't know how many people are on it, I think, so,
Yeah,
but
I was just trying to get the numbers written down. Because I think finance and facilities is our biggest, and I
Right.
worry a little bit about. Which committee are you on? Finance, thank you.
Yeah, we were 5.
So you'd be 6,
But we're
Pages.
also finance and facilities.
Yeah.
right, but you're
So-
one now, so.
There may be something about 5 to 6 doesn't change anything. If you were at 6 and went to 7 and now
Right.
you're a quorum of the full board, then.
That's
maybe
right.
it's- yeah.
A little nervous, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so it should be fine for you to be on finance and facilities.
Yeah.
you know, and then again, just trying to help folks,
Yeah.
wherever. I could be helpful.
Beautiful. So, just for the minutes, for Community Engagement Committee, we'll have Liz Sayre, Meredith Rosignol, Kristen Toy, and Barb Crandall. For Policy and Governance, we'll have Sarah Lauer, Justin Pearson, and Aaron Jipner. And then for Finance and Facilities, we'll have Mike Dash, Kylie Pelland, Kathy Apgar, Brad Johnson, Melissa Laurie, and Herb Olson. For a negotiation, can we
That
just,
breakdown was 6, 4, 3,
Right.
just for whatever
Yeah.
balance.
you're uncomfortable with that?
Yes, I would ask the P, just because he mentioned being interested in P and G, like for the P and G team that never sat on that committee. You feel like you have a lot for the 3 of you, and another person who's strong in writing would be beneficial. Sorry to like throw that wrench in there, but I'm just curious because I don't know how much work is on your plate and you want, and would one more be beneficial for that?
I feel like we're pretty well oiled at this point, but I mean, it would never hurt to have another person because making decisions as 3 people is usually pretty like. Everyone's capiche and there's no, which can be a little limiting, right?
Yeah, so I'm fine on the finance committee, but if you need a little help drafting, you know, document drafting and stuff like that, I'd be happy to one day.
Yeah, and we usually bring stuff to the board for a glance anyway, so policy and governance will update a document and bring it to you all for eyes, then revise it if we need to, so everyone can see it.
And there's nothing saying that membership can't change at some point if it feels like we need to
Imbalance.
adjust
Yeah.
to spread the word.
So if we want to approve this all as one slate, I think I'll just continue with. Make sure everyone is in the right place and then we'll just approve this as a slate if everyone's okay with that. So for negotiations, right now we have Brad Johnson, Mike Dash, and Liz Sayre. And then for the board rep to the Hanover Career Center, Liz has said she will continue to serve in that capacity. Our community representative is also gonna remain the same. Kim Farnham, who's also the chair of that board, would like to continue in her role. And then the community council rep is also Liz, and you said you wanted to stay in that role as well.
Yeah, yep, yeah, I can, unless somebody else feels like they're better able to make the meetings. They haven't been very successful at attending. But I do stay in touch, right, and send an email and communicate, and I can kind of get updates, I think is the best I can do with that, 'cause their meeting time is a little difficult to get there, so if everybody is okay with that, that's kind of how I think that engagement works best.
And meeting time is what, a little before 3 or right at 3, something like that?
Yeah, it's very good. Yeah,
Pick up
the-
time,
the
yeah.
clock, yeah,
Oh, okay, good luck. Yeah.
So are people comfortable with that, or is someone else feeling like they want to jump in? Yeah, okay. Everyone's good. All right. So that is all of the committees and assignments. Vicky, I'm just checking in with you. Yeah. Okay.
I had a question. I know usually the board sends a representative to the School Boards Association. Is that something that comes up? And again, if someone wants to do that, that's totally fine, but I thought, you know, maybe I could, it's a Montpelier-based institution. And if you want to do that, I'll be happy to fulfill that role, but it's entirely up to you guys.
It might be something, because we didn't put it on this agenda, we might have to discuss it next meeting and vote on that, but that's a good point. Make a note of that too. Okay. So. I get an motion please, to appoint the representatives to the following committees and assignments. For community engagement, finance and facilities, policy and governance, negotiations, board rep to Hannaford Career Center, community rep to Hannaford Career Center, and community council representative. Justin first, second, Sarah second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of appointing the representatives to the following committees as already discussed, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention. Okay. All right. Going down to item D, which is the board highlights assignment, so. I sent you an email about that already too. Patrick and I just discussed the, dates for next school year when we will meet. I'm keeping it the same sort of Tuesdays, right? The second and fourth Tuesday, unless there's a vacation week that bumps the meetings forward. Do you want me to go over what those are now or send an email with the
Email.
dates?
Yeah.
Email.
Emails.
Okay.
I have a caveat with that January.
Right. So in January, we don't have a vacation, but the annual meeting will need to be fit in there, and to just meet our timeline, it might be best to bump them forward. So I'll send that in the email I send you as well about what dates we're choosing. So the board highlights assignment, as well as the monitoring reports assignments, will be updated with those dates in there for when things are due. So you can take a look at I think I have them filled in until June right now, which is right at the end of our meeting here this year. So you can all take a look at that as you will. And that's the whole agenda. Unless there's any public comment. Okay.
Nice job putting your best foot forward with Herb here
Yeah,
on the first
exactly.
day. Always going this smooth and quick and easy.
About 4.5 hours early.
It was just 4.
I'm just kidding.
All right,
It only happened once.
a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved. I'll second.
Meredith first, Kristen second.
Here's-
All
I'm gonna do now.
All those in favor of adjourning at 6:30 PM, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, take care.